have, so it'll have scaled much, much better. Alright, Trinity Force. Okay, the Trinity Force is the granddaddy of all items in that it gives you pretty much a little bit of everything. One of the nice things about Trinity Force is it's really cheap to upgrade. The final recipe cost is only 300 gold, so it's if you're getting any of the items that build into a Trinity Force, you know, if you're getting at least 2 of them, you may as well build a third and then complete it because it's not very expensive. And the nice thing about it is that every item that goes into a Trinity Force is extraordinarily good. Really what it's going to come down to is, are you a hero that can take advantage of Sheen? If yes, then Trinity Force is going to be awesome for you as well. Sheen is, and I talked about it, no, I guess I haven't talked about it in the last video. When you activate Sheen, oh yes, I did in the context of Lichbane, but I'm going to talk about it again anyway. So Sheen gives you a little bit of mana, a little bit of ability power, and a passive where every time you use an ability, your next auto attack does 80% bonus damage. Okay, you know, so almost doubles your swing. So every time you cast a spell, your next just plain auto attack is going to do a lot more damage. And it's really good. It's good on anyone who regularly casts spells. Anyone who maybe's got one spell on a super short cooldown, so they can spam it fairly often. Or it's no good for someone who just walks into a battle, uses 4 abilities all at once, and then is done for, you know, 10 or 15 seconds. Because it has an internal 3-second cooldown, and at the very least you've got to be able to swing between spells to take advantage of it. But anyone with a really short cooldown ability, especially when some of those like on next hit do something, so we're talking about Nasus, we're talking about Blitzcrank, really good. It actually even works good on Gangplank because his parlay shot counts as sort of like a melee attack. It's kind of weird that way. So you activate parlay, and it's the same, and that's good enough to trigger Sheen. And then when you actually shoot someone with parlay, it does the parlay damage plus 80% from your Sheen. It's a really weird mechanic, but it's amazing, obviously. So I don't know if Sheen is going to be recommended for Pirate, because Pirate can make use of stats like crit a lot. But it does work with him, so it's kind of an interesting mechanic. Anyway, so if you get Sheen, if Sheen is a good item for you, then everything else will work well together. Phage, I've talked about before, is a great ability to be able to slow people down. Zeal is one of the best items for its cost. I'll talk a little bit about Zeal later. But is really, really good item for its cost. And some people, in fact, end up grabbing like 2 Zeals or something like that without even bothering to upgrade Zeal into either Trinity Force or a Phantom Dancer. It's just a good enough item on its own. And so, you know, once you sort of start down this path of maybe getting these items, it may be worthwhile just continuing and finishing the Trinity Force. Obviously, the Trinity Force as a whole is really expensive. 4,070 gold. You know, you're like, oh, it's going to take forever to build it. Yes, it will take forever to build it, but every single item you build on the way is incredible on its own. You know, if you're walking around with a Sheen and a Phage, you're in really good shape. You know, throw in a Zeal, you're even better. Of course, by the time you get all 3, it's probably not much more expensive to just finish Trinity Force. But every single item that you build as part of this is fantastic and it helps you out. So rushing a Trinity Force is certainly a valid move. What I like to do on Blitzcrank, if I'm going to be playing sort of a more physical Blitzcrank as opposed to a tanky one, I start and build a Sheen right away, and then I get my boots, and then I go to Phage and then finish my Trinity Force. And I do really well with that, and there's a lot of heroes that can do that exact build. And for the money, you're getting lots. Like it's just sick. Very good item. I'm gonna take another drink of my cola. All right, Infinity Edge. Infinity Edge is the final item that upgrades from a BF sword, or as Watch Me SC likes to call it, a boyfriend sword. I think the BF may stand for something else, though. What does this do? Well, okay, so it gives you lots of attack damage. In fact, it gives you 5 attack damage for quote-unquote free as part of the cost to create it. It gives you critical strike. It gives you 2% critical strike for free. Okay, so obviously this is an item that you're building if you're someone who can take advantage of attack damage and critical strike percentage. It gives you 20% critical strike. At this point, you're really doing a lot of it. And what is the unique? Well, the unique is your critical hits deal 250% damage instead of 200 damage. So instead of doing double damage, they deal slightly more than double damage. Infinity Edge is the item you want to get if you already have some critical strike rating. Maybe you've got it from Masteries, maybe you've got it from Ruins, maybe you've got it from another item. For example, you might have an Avarice Blade, which hopefully you're going to build into a Youmuu's Ghost Blade at some point. And then you build Infinity Edge, so the critical hits that you're already getting are dealing much more damage. I don't know what the break-even point is between buying this and buying something else. Like, how much critical strike do you need for Infinity Edge to be worthwhile? Perhaps it's good enough even by itself, but it is the sort of thing you want to build as part of a group. Like what some characters will do, and I've seen Blitzcrank do this, I've seen certain Teemo builds do this. They will go and get themselves 2 or even 3 Avarice Blades. Okay, they just sit there and stack crit. They may even have crit Ruins, and then they will get an Infinity Edge, and they will get to the point where they crit more often than anything else. They could have a 60, 70%, 80, or even 90% crit chance, and they want their critical hits to deal more damage because that is what they're basing their character on. They might have critical damage Ruins, so it's the sort of thing. It's probably good as is, but if you're planning on getting an Infinity Edge as part of your build, try to get more critical hit rating somewhere just to make it more and more valuable. It's the sort of thing you want to go, get at least the one Avarice Blade, at least build into Youmuu's Ghost Blade either before or after Infinity Edge, and that is going to be a really, really strong combo. Moving on. Speaking of Critical Strike, the Critical Strike category. Again, I'm going to save the elixir for later. Brawler's Glove. Brawler's Glove is cheap enough that you can start with it. However, most characters aren't going to want to start with this. Crit is kind of unreliable, and at the very start of the game, a long time, you do better with a little bit of health regen, a little bit of health, a little bit of armor, some other stat, maybe some life steal. I don't know. The only reason you would ever want to start with Brawler's Gloves is if you were planning to get an early Avarice Blade, which you can certainly do. Avarice Blades are fairly cheap, and if you get it early, then it starts to accumulate gold, so that's obviously very, very strong. And now there's really a lot of value to doing that, in that you can upgrade it to the Ghost Blade. So, I think a lot more people will start doing that these days. But this was always a strong combo for any of those people who might have wanted to go multiple Avarice Blades into Infinity Edge, which I just talked about. So you need a very specific build to start with the Brawler's Glove. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know that I am building a crit build, and then, really just go for it. And then starting with Brawler's Gloves is perfectly reasonable. Yeah, so Avarice Blade is next. Avarice Blade gives you, actually it's not bad, for 350 gold, which is just under the cost of the Brawler's Glove in general. You get 4% crit, so half another Brawler's Glove, and then you get the 5 gold every 10 seconds. In and of itself, I mean, you don't really care about the Avarice Blade in terms of the crit strike rating. It's not that good for that. You're buying this for the gold generation, and, well, I don't know, I guess it's a fine item. There's nothing wrong with it, but being able to upgrade into Youmuu's Ghost Blade is amazing. So, get it as early as you can, and the break-even point, you can do a little bit of calculation based on the gold, based on what the value of what you think this item is. How long do you need to hold on to this item to pay for itself? Well, I think it's maybe at the 12.5-minute mark, something like that, maybe a little less for this item. I will try to put an annotation, I think, on this video at some point, just detailing the math of what the break-even point is. But yeah, if you're planning on getting the Ghost Blade, one thing you can do is rush the Avarice Blade, hold on to it for a while to pay for itself, and then upgrade. And